Welcome to the Online Great Books podcast, brought to you by OnlineGreatBooks.com, where we talk about the good life, the great books, great conversation, and great ideas.
Hello, dear listener. Welcome back to the Online Great Books podcast. I'm Brett, the producer, and this week on the show, Scott and Karl continue their discussion on Edmund Morris's 1864 book, 10 Acres Enough. The classic guide to independent farming, written in not an easier time, but a simpler one. With more clarity. I think that's how Scott puts it later in the show. I wound the conversation back about a minute and a half, so you can just remember where we left off. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and we'll see you again next week.
He's poking right at me, Karl. He's screwing with me. He says he'd cultivated, and this weed, purslane, had come up instead of his turnips. He said, it almost staggered me as to the correctness of my theory that the number of seeds in the ground yet to vegetate must somewhere have a limit. Here were evidently 1 million of kinds which, up to this time, had not even showed themselves. So this is a weed he'd never even seen before on the place. And he says, we then recultivated the ground and sowed it again with turnips, but the yield was very poor. Either the purslane had appropriated the whole energy of the guano, or the sowing was too late in the season. But this little incident will illustrate the value of observation to a farmer. This is where he pokes me in the eye. Book farming is a good thing in its place, but observation is more instructive. Book farming.
Mm-hmm.
Here I am reading his book about farming. I thought
Well, that's what he had done. He'd been living in the city, reading all the farming books, figuring he knew what to do.
Yeah.
They did pretty well.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, he crushes it. His nurseryman comes by and visits him. I thought this was great. He offered him a bunch of strawberry plants. It was late in the season, and he lets him take them on credit. And he says, you can pay me for them out of your first crop. So it's not only a good price, but it's no money down, no interest. And so Morris can't believe his good luck here. And then later he talks to the nurseryman. And he's like, yeah, I was going to plow those under tomorrow. Nobody would buy them. But he saw it as a win-win. You know, that guy got some money where he would have gotten none, and he got a good price. But he's always driving good bargains like that. The story of the Blackberries is great. He was reading in all of his book farming and reading all of his magazines about farming. He saw an advertisement for a blackberry plant that was, it's chapter 8, Blackberries, a remarkable coincidence.
The special blackberry.
The special blackberries. He saw this ad, and it says, it stated that the rare plant could not be propagated from seed, only from suckers, and therefore very slowly. A single bush would supply a large family with fruit. The fruit was said to be strung upon its branches like onions on a rope. I was amazed at the extravagant accounts given of its unexampled productiveness and matchless flavor. So he reads along, and it says, one generous advertiser offered to send 6 roots by mail for $5, provided 10 red stamps were enclosed with the money. It's a lot of money. Almost $1 a plant, and it's actually more than that with the postage. And he sends it off, and he gets these roots back. And he propagates them, and he says 18 months afterwards, after she'd eaten the first bowlful of the fully ripened fruit, he says, hey, I took $5 and bought this, which she would never have allowed. So he did it on the sly.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently everything about him was true. He says, from the group of bushes, I picked 15 quarts of berries superior to anything of the kind we'd ever seen. I picked about 15 gallons of blackberries this summer, wild blackberries.
Mm-hmm.
They're about the size of a marble and so tart your face will prolapse when you bite one of them. They're good for jelly or pie because you add sugar anyway. And they're not very small, and the seeds are large, so there's that grit in there, which I like. But then I also planted a bunch of Which ones did I plant? I planted Apache and Ouachita, which are thornless blackberry cultivars. I planted them this spring, and they're really not. They're supposed to bear fruit on their second year of their second. They're 2-year-old canes. So they're not supposed to make you. They made fruit, some, not a lot. They weren't supposed to make any, but they made some. Blackberries are as big as my thumb. Yeah, they're big around as a broom handle, and almost 2 inches long. Delicious, amazing. It's not even the same thing. Barely the same thing. So he picked these 15 quarts. He said, I then confided the secret to my wife. She considered the plants cheap at $5 and pronounced my venture a good one. I think we had more than $5 worth of satisfaction showing. Anyway, I was reading this. I thought, is this the beginning? Like Mendel in his Mendelian genetics experiments and his wrinkled peas and his smooth peas wasn't much before this. Mm-mm. You know, farmers had been selecting for the best fruit and the best animals since they ever started. But this is when this starts to pick up some steam. And he makes $400 clear, I think is what it was, off of selling these plants later because he has something nobody else has. This is really unusual. You know, it's pre-GMO. It's pre-mass communications. You know, so even if you had such a thing, advertising it would be kind of difficult. You know, he probably saw it on an ad the size of a business card in the back matter of some magazine that he was reading, and he took a risk and made it. Amazing. You know, the red delicious apple was found in 1872. And before that, you're dealing with sort of crabapple-y kind of things, smaller, harder, lower sugar content apples. Have you heard the Red Delicious story?
No. Do you like Red Delicious?
No. That was the best apple you could get, though. It was amazing at the time because you're dealing with, before that, it's more crabapple-y kinds of things. You know, it's a higher sugar, better apple than what you could get before that. Johnny Appleseed was not planting Honey Crisps. So Stark Brothers Nursery, my favorite nursery, you should buy from Stark Brothers, guys. I told you the 9 plants I had died. They gave me 125% store credit for those plants. That's their guarantee, and they did it. No questions asked. Fantastic. Stark Brothers had a competition in the 1870s, I guess it was. The date's probably wrong. But people sent in their fruit to, I think they were having this competition. I think it was in New Orleans that year. And these people sent in this fruit. And the finest one of them was this Red Delicious apple. It won the competition. They misplaced the package and the address, and they didn't know who had sent it in. Now, Stark Brothers is a nursery, so they're having this competition because they want to find the best stuff and they want to sell it, you know. Well, they couldn't find it. They're like, oh, no. Well, they had the competition again, and it came in again, and they figured out that it was a guy in Iowa who had one. Frankly, it's a mutant tree, right? A happy mutant tree. The Red Delicious stems from that one tree that gentleman in Iowa had. And since then, almost any apples that you do like are related to it. But anyway, he's got these blackberries. It's the same deal. There was a guy in upstate New York in Syracuse, I can't remember his name, you can go look it up, had this one bush on his property. He was going to mow it down or take it out or something, and the neighbor saw it and was like, holy crap, that's amazing. And went and took root cuttings and went home with the root cuttings and propagated it. Secret gets out, and by Edmund Morris here gets some of these plants and just makes a mint of money off of them, both selling the plants as a nurseryman and then later also, selling the fruit. The people in New York and in Philadelphia that buy the fruit say that he has the most beautiful, finest fruit they've ever seen. It's really interesting. This is the birth of this modern fruit.
Well, and he was lucky or smart to get into that particular berry market before anybody else.
Both.
Lucky, but
And smart.
you have to be able to recognize the thing that you were lucky enough to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not all luck.
Super clever. Really a neat story. So where is it here? Where's his end of the year accounting for the first year?
Oh, I don't know. It's easier for you to flip pages than me.
Yeah, these physical books. The first time I read this
gadget.
book, I read it in a PDF from archive.org. So you guys can get it there. And then I read it. I actually bought this.
It's also on Gutenberg.
I bought the hard copy one because I wanted Charity to read it. And she's been reading it. So fun. Chapter 16, close of my first year. It's loss and gain. He paid $248 for poop, $20 for guano, $30 for plowing services, $30 for cabbage and tomatoes. He lost $7 on his first cow, $8 for seed, $12 for 6 pigs, some corn meal and bran for $28. Dick's wages for 6 months, $72. He spent $455. He had permanent outlays totaling $226 for peaches, raspberries, strawberries. Bada bada bling, yada yada, whatever. Netted $336 his first year.
And how much did he pay for the house?
And land, $600.
Yeah, he did all right.
Yeah, and he does say, had it not been for the Blackberry sales, he wouldn't have made any money. That's true. He netted $460 on the Blackberry plants. So his profit was basically that. So the first year they were probably going to be even Steven or maybe a little bit behind. But he comes out at $336. Now, after he sold his business, which had a lot of capital in it, he had all these expensive machines. He had been making payments on those and had equity in those machines for probably 15 years, 10 or 15 years. He walked away. His life savings at that point was $2,000. He made a little over a seventh of his whole life savings in the first year he had done this.
Mm-hmm.
The second year, he cleared $1,025.06. So I wrote here, this is in raspberries, the Lawtons. He planted this, Lawton is the variety. On chapter 18 here, Karl, two paragraphs from the end, I wrote, crucial accounting lesson here. I despise the modern MBA, not the people that get them, but the curriculum is generally junk. The approaches to dealing with money are not intuitive and not useful for small business. And this is just perfect for small business stuff. It seems so simple, but we've lost this. I enjoy small business. I've been successful with it. On the Scott Stream thing, I talk about it. On the Barbell Logic thing, I talked about it. I talk about it here. People email me about it all the time. I get asked questions about it all the time. And it's kind of like the online great books thing. People don't think they're smart enough to do it. They don't think they can do small business. Now, somebody will have a skill that's highly marketable, and their employee resells it for them all the time. But they don't think they can actually run the business that makes their skill valuable, you know? And it's because the business schools and the managerial class in this country have complicated that to profit, frankly. Well, he just has this excellent and elegant statement of how he thought about his money here. The result of this year's operations was apparently conclusive. My expenses for the farm had been $709.80, while my receipts had been $1,734.86, leaving a surplus of $1,025.06 for the support of my family. But more than half of their support had been drawn from the products of the farm, and at the year's end, when every account had been settled up and every bill at the stores had paid off, I found that of this $1,025.06, I had $567 in cash on hand, proving that it had required only $458.06 in money, in addition to what we consumed from the farm, to keep us all with far more comfort than we had ever known in the city. Thus, after setting aside $356.06 for the purchase of manure, there was a clear surplus of $200 for investment. So, On the books, in the books, he cleared $1,000 and change. But if you actually looked in his bank account, he had $567. Where did the difference go? Where did the difference go? Well, it had cost him $458 of his cash flow to net the book gain of $1,000, essentially.
Okay.
So he had a positive, even though he booked whatever, X, 1,000 and so on, his cash flow was $567 for the year. Positive cash flow. And he set aside 3/5 of that for more poop because that's his bread and butter. And then he put $200 more dollars back. So he put $356.06 aside to continue to add to the capital of the business and the value of the business, and pull $200 of the equity or the proceeds out of it's owner's equity at that point, pulls it out of the business for investment elsewhere. There aren't any words about ROI. There aren't any words about cash flow. There isn't any of that kind of stuff. He's just looking at it. He's like, we brought in $1,700. I wrote down all my expenses, and those were $709. I subtract them apart, and it leaves me with $1,000. But I only had $567 of cash on hand. Well, what happened?
He fed his family.
He fed his family, which hurt the cash flow, which is fine. That's what it's doing here. So he ends up with... Anyway, it's just exactly what happened. That's all. If it wasn't for the tax man demanding a certain kind of bookkeeping so that you can fill out your tax returns, this is the kind of accounting that we would do in a small business.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually have always kept my books like this. I mean, I record everything. I don't cheat, but I always record everything. I just keep them like this. And then I give all that to the tax man, and then he has to reclassify things and move things around and do things to make it, stay in trust with the IRS, and we pay our bills, and we never had to pay a penalty. And since I've never paid one. I've never gotten out of trust with them. You can do the small business, guys. You don't have to have a finance degree. Just keep excellent records. Stay in touch with that which you are recording. Know it in your mind. For years when I got started and was broke as a joke, I kept the numbers, like the sums, like the expense and the total of cash coming in. I wrote that on a note card and kept it in my pocket. And I wrote it down every day on that note card. At the end of the month, I'd throw that note card away and start another one. So I always knew. That's all you got to do. Unless you have debt. He says, I had never done better than this in the city. There, the year's end never found me with accounts squared up and a clear cash balance on hand. Few occupations could be carried on in the city after so snug a fashion. Credit is there the rule and cash the exception, as at least it was 10 years ago. But in the apparently humbler trade of trucking and fruit growing, everything is cash. So he can do cash accounting.
Yeah. I have found useful just you guys interviewed that You Need a Budget guy a while back. Mm-hmm. You and Matt did.
Jesse Meekum.
And yeah, and I've used that, and mostly what I've used it for is it just makes me click through everything.
You have to look at every transaction.
Which even there, even if you're not running a business, it's just, I have to see, I spent this on that, I spent this on that. And just having that second thing, it's too easy to take the credit card and buy the stuff.
Yep.
Just having me have to go back, I've got a backlog, I need to do it. I'll probably do it while I'm lifting today. And say, I bought this, I bought that, I bought that. Gosh, just seeing how much money I would spend on food while I was away from home.
Yeah.
Is ridiculous. The cost of a bad meal at McDonald's, and they are bad.
A baddie meal.
I've made a vow to myself I'm never going to eat at McDonald's again because I just decided I don't like this.
Yeah.
This is not any good. And it's $10 now for a burger and fries and a drink. Well, how much good food could you buy for $10 that you cooked yourself? Less than before, sure. Things are inflating out there, but keeping track of what you take in and what you spend is really important.
Yep. Just that.
But then being surprised by it at the end of the year when you're out of money.
Just this, what now seems like old-fashioned thrift and diligence is just, to me, is just a
well, they don't want you to be diligent. They want you to take your card and do the touchless scan.
Yep.
Do you want a receipt? No, thank you. And it's super easy to spend money without even giving any thought to it.
So,
and then if you carry a balance, it's 20% interest.
Yep.
That's what they want you to do.
It's a free market, dude.
It's designed to get you into that case. So here's the minimum that you need to pay on your account. You shouldn't know. You should just pay your account. If you're going to buy on credit, just pay the thing. Don't pay the minimum. It's insane.
Oh my God, it kills me. People are probably listening to this who are interested in doing something a lot like what Mr. Morris did. And they're saying, yeah, but I can't do that. He was able to buy his place for $600 and then he didn't have a mortgage and then he could proceed. And I know that it's a lot harder now than it was for him. Inflation, open borders. There are people that don't live here buying land here that you have to compete with to purchase. It's much more difficult and it's much more expensive. At the end of that same chapter I was talking about it, he says, I could name various men who, beginning on less than $100 and on rented land, have in a few years become its owners and in the end arrived at great wealth solely from the business of raising fruit and truck. And I wrote here, it can still happen. Greg Judy has this book called, I think it's No Risk Ranching. Is that it, Karl? No Risk Ranching?
I think so.
Yeah, No Risk Ranching, where he talks about how to obtain leases for grazing land and low-cost leases on grazing land and set up a cattle operation without owning any of the land. Not only is the book about doing that, it's not a cripple. He's not like, well, if you have to, you can do this. He's like, this is the best way to do it. This is the best way to do it. So if you're out there listening and thinking, I can't do this, I'm not a business person, I don't have any money, I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, but a diligent person with more energy than money could bang on some doors, write some letters, make some phone calls, probably find 5 acres that they could plant berries on and at least get started.
Yeah, I read a book, The Resilient Gardener. I thought it was pretty good. It's a woman in Pacific Northwest. I've talked about it before. She's got the 5 things that she thinks if you grow these things, this is your way towards feeding your family. It's potatoes and corn and squash, ducks, and beans. That's what she does.
Sounds right.
She leases out land to do it. If you drive around, even around here, I'm in Illinois at the moment. You drive around, there is land that is not used for anything.
Yeah.
It's soaking up the sun. It's not growing anything. You know, I know a lady that's got 40 acres. She's out mowing the whole thing. Well, okay. Janice, could we take an acre of that and put it under cultivation? I'll give you some potatoes and some strawberries. You can have first pick.
Yeah. What if you go up to somebody who has 5 acres that they just mow and you said, I would like to plant 5 acres of these thornless blackberries on your place in exchange for a 5-year lease.
Or fruit trees.
Or fruit trees, right.
Yeah, or fruit trees. I will plant fruit trees on this acreage if I can harvest the fruit, and I will give you 1/10 of the fruit.
Or how about this? I will give you jack shit, but it's a 5-year lease. At the end of the lease, the trees are yours.
That's another way. You could do it that way.
You probably, if you're trying to cut a sweet deal.
I wouldn't probably say jack shit in the negotiation.
But you're improving their property. Like, this is possible. Around here in Oklahoma, there are a lot of people buying land that are from out of state who are buying land for hunting. 4 doctors from Kansas City, maybe, for example, might get together and buy 300 acres. They're not going to do anything with it but try to kill Bambi on it.
And that's only in October or whenever deer season is.
Bow season starts October 1st, and then by Thanksgiving, it's over. They might come and hunt turkeys at some point. They might fish in the pond, whatever. But if you can find those guys, those kinds of owners, and cut a deal, to put an orchard in it, to do something, to graze on it, it can be done. That's all. And particularly if it's a side hustle for you. You got something, you're working from home with some business, some job you don't like, and this is your side hustle. You're working 25, 30 hours a week on your farm thing, and you're working, whatever on your other hustle, and you're saving your bucks. You could do it.
Yeah. It's an inspirational book. The situation is going to be different. You're not going to.
It was easier for him.
You're not going to probably be in New Jersey.
No. And I'm here in Oklahoma. I got a pretty good plots of land. It's not as good as what he had. My topsoil is anywhere from 4 to 18 inches deep, depending on where you are on this place. Clay subsoil. They're hitting a speck of sand on the whole place. And he's got good sandy loam that's 4 feet deep. We're going to have several days a year that are in excess of 100 degrees. We're going to have several that are below 0. The best farmlands got houses on it now, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we're going to end up in, well, that's not true. Iowa, and there's some places with real deep, very good, good soil and very good farmland that's still out there. But you're going to end up being on more marginal land than him. But what are you going to do? You're going to cry about it because Morris's was easier for him, cheaper, whatever. What about the German?
A German and his wife. A German with his wife and 2 children just large enough to pull weeds and drive a cow had settled 7 years before on 8 acres, from which the owner had been driven by running deeply into debt at the grog shop. The farm's in terrible shape. In this squalid condition, the newly arrived German took possession with the privilege of purchasing for $600. His whole capital was $3. He began with 4 pigs. Let's see. Maybe I should just read the whole thing. The manure from these, which was daily emptied into it. Oh, yeah. He gets a butter Ferkin. What's a Ferkin? Is this a big tank?
I don't think so. I think it's a large barrel.
It's a good word. Let me read this. He's talking about the importance of manure, and the German knows also the value of der Poop. The manure from these from his pigs was daily emptied, which he paid for in work. So he got pigs on credit, I think, for working.
That is a 56-pound butter keg.
56 pounds of butter?
That's what a Ferkin was, a wooden keg that you put.
What would that be in liquid measure?
I don't know.
How much poop is that?
I don't know. It says it's 20. That's about 25 kilos. So 12, 15 gallons.
So 25 liters. Yeah. The manure for these was daily emptied into an empty butter firkin, which also served as a family water closet. I don't think you could do that now. You can't use human waste.
You can on your house garden.
If you're going to sell it, because it gets in the E. coli gets into the lettuce.
Yeah.
Which is why I don't eat salad. The whole was converted into liquid manure, which was supplied to cabbages and onions. And so he's leveraging his manure in growing cabbages and turnips and rutabagas. Long before winter set in, this hero had bought a cow. This hero.
Yep.
Of manure had bought a cow. For while his own crops were growing, he'd earned money by working around the neighborhood. He readily obtained credit at the store, for he was soon discovered to be deserving. When away at work, his wife plied the hoe and acted as mistress of the aforesaid butter tub, which is the poop tub, while the children pulled weeds. Yeah, all this guy has is immigrant. You know, how much English did he speak? And passion for manure.
Yeah, right where you ended, I wrote, read aloud. His cabbages and roots exceeded any in the township. They discharged his little store bills and kept his cow during the winter, while the living cow and the dead pigs kept the entire family, for they lived about as close to the wind as possible.
That's a good expression, as close to the wind.
The man's passion was for liquid manure. Morris later in this chapter says that a fresh reading of some forgotten pages reminded him that any of the manure, or for him, manure isn't just poo. It's anything that improves the land. I think he calls ashes manure at some point. He had bought bone meal. He called that manure. So it's anything that improved the soil. It was any amendment. But he says this fresh reading of forgotten pages reminded him that any of these manures, any of these amendments could only be used in a readily usable form. They had to be liquefied. They had to be soluble to get through the root, which he calls the greedy mouths of the plant, for the plant to use it. And so he figured at that point that the manure that he just, that he tilled in or, top dressed around the plants wasn't all getting used. Or if it was getting used, it took longer. It had to be rained on, and it took longer for it to get to the root. So he's watching this hero of the manure pile just clean everybody's clock. I mean, the most productive farm around, pound for pound, and then he decides that he's got to do it too.
You think the German has many visitors?
I don't know. Apparently Mr. Morris went and visited him.
You can get used to the smell of manure. It's not so
Animal
bad.
manure is not that. I mean, cow and horse it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
If it is a carnivore whose excrements you step in, it is the worst thing ever.
Yeah. Cat poo.
Like a dog, you step in dog poo and it's terrible. But cow's not that bad. Horse is nothing.
Yeah.
Horse is just like grass.
Horses are terribly inefficient. They're terrible.
How do they even eat enough? I don't know.
They barely do. It all comes out just like it went in, but compressed. It's terrible. So here's where it is. Here he says, it is by contact of the countless mouths of the roots with minute particles of manure that they suck up nutriment, not by contact with a dense clod. Hence the astonishing and immediate efficacy of liquid manure. In that, the nutriment had been reduced to its utmost condition of divisibility. And when the liquid is applied to the soil, saturation reaches the entire root, embracing its marvelous network of minute fibers and affording to each the food which it may be seeking. It's so good. And all along, he had been putting all of his barnyard manure under cover. He didn't want it getting rained on and the best of it washing down the roadside ditch, he said. I have a compost pile out here that I'm quite proud of, Karl. I've put about 48 to 60,000 pounds of stuff in it. I'm not exactly sure. I've tried to keep track. And it's shrinking, but it rains and like this dark brown runoff comes off of it. And the weeds around the compost pile are just doing great. No, I want it. It's such a big compost pile that I don't want to have to water it to keep it cooking, so I don't want to cover it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a bunker to put it in. Like, some people nowadays, if you're a dairy farmer, they take all the pee and the poop and everything, and they put it in a bunker, a concrete tank, a really big concrete tank, and it's liquid. And then they spread it on the fields, that they cut feed off of and hay off of for the cattle later. Well, I don't have such a thing. And so I'm losing some of my precious nutriment. I'm depriving the hungry mouths of those fibrous roots of my plants.
Mm-hmm. What are you going to do about it?
Probably nothing. Probably make a bigger pile. Well, that's the problem, right? Like, okay, well, I can pour some concrete maybe, or build a roof over it, and 2x4s are at $9 a piece.
Yeah.
Or do you just make a whole lot more and just be satisfied you're going to lose 15, 18, 40% of it or whatever it is,
Can you cover it with a tarp?
Yeah, but I want it to get rained on, and I'm not real interested in being in the business of uncovering and covering. I was talking to a guy the other day, and he's like, what are you going to do with all that compost? I'm like, it's going to make like 2 pickup loads. It reduces down so much. I'm going to be so unhappy with how much there is when it's over. So whatever.
If it be possible to build a monument out of liquid manure, here was one on this farm of 8 acres. It's a manure monument.
Yep.
Well, and so monoculture farming, you don't do this. You just pour petroleum products on your field.
It's a base. Modern agriculture is basically hydroponics in a dirt matrix. Dirt's not the same as soil. You apply the chemicals that you need. The dirt holds it near the root, and then off you go.
Yes. Speaking of back to the land, it is possible at some point in the future. It seems almost certain at some point in the future that diminishing returns will set in, and there won't be enough food unless you grow it.
And have guard towers around it.
Yeah. So I don't know how much more you can just keep pouring this stuff into dead fields, which they are.
Yeah.
You know the strangest thing? You drive by the cornfields, talking about weeds. There's no weeds. It's just corn. Strange things are going on in agriculture.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, there are. Towards the end of the book, he just sums up his first 3 years, I think. He says, the secret to weeds lies in a nutshell. He says, let none go to seed, nor let any cultivator be discouraged, no matter how formidable the host he may have to attack at the beginning. But if he will procure the proper labor-saving tools and drive them with a determined perseverance, success is sure. He doesn't believe that you're going to get them all. But a lot of work early will save you a lot more work later. And I'd probably need to print that out and tape it to my bill of my hat or something.
Mm-hmm. I love these little comments throughout this book. I have a bunch highlighted. It is with fruit as it is with rum. Men are never too poor to buy both.
Yeah. But he's not a teetotaler.
Yeah,
though.
That's true. I was thinking I'm low on gin, and I was thinking I need to get some gin, and then I'm thinking, do I really need to get some gin?
We should make gin.
Shh! Don't tell the revenuers.
No, we should make some gin.
We should.
He's not a teetotaler. He says, of their blackberries, the stray fruit was gathered and converted into an admirable wine. Some 70 bottles were made for home use. What?
I got a friend who was, I believe, either born or conceived on the boat from Italy.
Mm.
And it talks about them. This is in the city of Chicago, just making wine in the basement.
Yeah. He says, my whole mind and energies were devoted to improving and attending it. I literally manured it with my brains.
That's poetic.
It's great, man. He talks of a man who obtained possession of a small farm with ample time allowed for payment. For his industry and skill, established a character, and a character served for capital. He's really interested in capital or character and honor too. He talks about people filing bankruptcy, and he calls it becoming embarrassed at the bank or experiencing a financial embarrassment. And then he talks about how this man's character served for capital, and also the German too. Like his character soon showed that he was good for seeds at the store, and then he would certainly pay back for the seeds after the crop came in.
Well, what that's going to take to have that sort of thing. So if I go to Bank of America and ask for a loan, they don't know me.
Nope.
They don't know my character. They have my credit score, I suppose, which is a proxy for character these days.
It's disgusting. We have remnants of this in our language. Oh, listen, to his credit, he made it right between him and the neighbor. It's in the words. I have a terrible credit score, but I've never had any trouble borrowing money. They could just see I had some. It's the catch-22. If you've got money, you don't need any. Mm-hmm. But that's the way it's supposed to be. This whole credit system we have is of manufacture. It's a really, metaphysically, what is credit now? What is it? Now they've got the credit score plus a borrowing risk calculation I've heard about on these houses. So what's the credit score? What does that mean? If you have to also have this separate risk assessment thing, like everything's very odd. And I read this book, and people might say that, oh, Hambrick loves that because he's nostalgic. It's not the past that I yearn for. It's clarity and simplicity. This world that this man lives in is so clear and clean and simple, not easy. I would like for my kids to have something like that.
Yeah. Well, everybody could see the manure guy, the German manure guy, Mr. Scheisse.
Over there killing it.
And you didn't catch my German joke
did.
there. But you didn't respond. I need a little feedback. And they could say, well, Mr. Scheisse, we know he's good for it. Because they know him.
They know him. And also, one of the things about the credit of Mr. Scheisse in Edmund's neighborhood is that it is so personal. If Mr. Morris takes seeds for tomato plants on credit, he's doing it at the same place where he's going to have to go to buy flour.
Mm-hmm.
So everything's so entwined. And also, the guy he buys the tomato seeds from is buying, turnips or farm eggs from his wife every day when she goes on market day. They have to do business together. They have to. So, collections isn't hard. When I was a kid, there was a little, it was a gas station. It was Trammell's. It was the Trammell's owned it. You could have a tab over there. They called it a tab. And you could go in there and fill up. And they had kerosene at the pump, too. That's how old-timey it was. And they had a little meat counter and sold a few things, kind of a general store kind of thing. And you could put it on the tab. And then they'd send you a bill at the end of the month.
Yeah.
Better than a credit card. JP was his name. I'm sorry, JC was Mr. Trammell. JC didn't charge you any interest. If you didn't pay, you couldn't get any more. And they would put your name on a piece of paper by the cash register.
I remember my granddad died in 1990. It must have been 98 or something. Sometime quite a bit after that. And I stopped in the hardware store not too far from where he lived. And I forget what I was buying, but I went in there. And when they got my name, his account came up. They still had it active.
Did you put it on his tab?
Wanted to know if I wanted to. Yeah, no, I didn't put it on his tab.
That's funny.
Yeah, the hardware store's gone now.
Of course.
Park Forest, Illinois. A town that he built.
Yeah.
He laid out the roads for that town.
Yeah. That sounds good.
I don't know. They're curvy.
Is there anything else that we need to say about this thing?
It's worth a read. It's a breezy read. It's not too hard. It makes you want to go do stuff. You'll want to go plant some seeds somewhere, which is probably good. Even if you're living in a city, I think there's something instructional in this. I have done very little. Had potatoes last year, didn't do too well. I will do better next year. I promise you on the potatoes. I had some good cabbages. The leeks were really good. Some dill. What else did we have? I planted blueberries, but I don't think we're going to get much out of them. Got some good peppers, really good peppers. I put peppers in my eggs that I had planted. And so this is real small scale. This is just a suburban guy on a quarter acre planting stuff. Our member Eric Olson is doing miraculous things. He gave us some potatoes. But you know what it does? Even if you're not going to go move out to the country, to plant stuff with the point of eating it is, I think, necessary for you to do. To be a healthy human. To realize, so there's a lot of people who think that you can get away from nature. So you don't have to respect nature, that we can just do whatever we want. Well, no, when you're trying to get your potatoes to grow and they don't get as big as you want because you had them in containers and not in the ground and they got too hot, well, it doesn't matter what you think they are. They're going to be small potatoes. And so you become respectful for the natural law because you have to respect it in order to make food out of air and water and dirt. So I would recommend you do some, even just a little bit.
Makes you live close to the weather, closer to reality.
Yeah, it's grounding.
We made lots of cucumbers, lots of okra, lots of plums, lots of blackberries.
I had some of the cucumbers.
Had very little luck with much else. I told the kids after that freeze that killed darn near everything, I told the kids that one of you, we're going to have to eat one of you this winter.
Which one?
We'll weigh them.
Cage match?
Cage match. Yeah, like our Sam Cooke, Frank Sinatra cage match from the Music and Ideas show we did. Yeah, this book's an inspiration. It's a lot like Thoreau's Walden, not as philosophical, not as sort of transcendental.
Well, sometimes you're reading Thoreau and you're like, can you just tell me how you did the beans?
And this guy,
instead of talking about Hindu myth,
this guy tells you about the beans. This is like the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin, and Walden had a baby, maybe.
Yeah, that's fair. It's very practical.
It's very practical, and it's just wonderful. He's a great writer, great turns of phrase. I would love to have gotten to have dinner with the Morrises and seen that nut brown maid, Kate, in her bloom.
I want to know where the farm was.
I tried to find that out, and from searching on the internet for a little while, I couldn't find it. There's no Wikipedia entry for this man. He ain't the greatest American, or maybe he is. He's a great American. There ought to be more about him. One of our OGB members, I don't remember which one, suggested this book to me. He said, "Well, I think you'd really like this." I have no idea where he found it, and I'm glad he pointed it out. It's a great thing. It's a time capsule and inspirational, and it's a picture of virtue and kindness and goodness. I love it. As opposed to this thing you're going to make me read next week.
Yep. So we're going to do an absolute 180. So much of a 180, it's a 360. Yeah, we are going to read 11 pages. It's only 11 pages of Martin Heidegger's lecture, Was ist Metaphysik?
Oh boy.
And I read it yesterday. It took me a day. I read it. I was listening to Bach while I read it. And I don't think it's so bad. I think it's actually... I'm interested to see what you make of it. I think it's pretty valuable.
Oh, it'll be all right. It's always good. It's fine.
I've been threatening him with continental philosophy for a long time. We did some Kierkegaard.
It's a 540-degree turn from today's show. Well, hey, listen, go give us a review. We haven't gotten any of those in a little while. Go follow Karl. He has a website. It's karlschudt.com. Karl with a K and a SCHUDT. Huh?
Yep. Yeah, and you could sign up and get little notices. You have to check your spam folder and confirm, but little notices when I update it. Got maybe 4 or 5 articles on it. Just trying to have an online presence and let you know who I am and what I think.
An online presence that can't be canceled?
Well, right. Well, it'd be a little harder for them to cancel me.
I'm really upset that you got thrown off Instagram before I did.
I didn't do anything.
Karl would post pictures of him squatting in food, and he gets canned. And I'm over there trying to get canned.
And you didn't. You must be useful some way.
In solidarity, I deleted my account. So you can find me at scotthamburg.com, or I'm on Telegram. You can find us there. Or you can go to onlinegreatbooks.com and get on the email list there. And, read along. And when you get in Online Great Books, you can get in our Slack and you can join the homesteading channel where there are about 100 people, or 123, I think the last time I looked, talking about this stuff, all from people that are thinking about planting a tomato plant in a window box in a New York City apartment to our friend Todd, who is hard as nails, and I don't think he buys anything. He makes hempen fiber clothes.
Not even electricity?
No, nothing. He doesn't buy anything. He lives in a burrow in the ground and is really serious about this stuff. And everybody's there helping each other. We have on the third Wednesday of the month, we have a Zoom discussion where everybody says what they're working on and ask questions. And yeah, it's good. So there's a lot more stuff going on there than you would think. It's not just books. It's not just books.
Nope.
It's not just books. It's not only books. It's also an echo chamber. So
No, gosh.
So if you're looking for an echo chamber, we might be for you. All right, talk to you guys in a couple weeks.